Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Claire and Kyle cross paths with Nate and Audra, and Victoria reunites with her family. In the Tack house, Victoria tells her daughter that Victor has texted and wants them all to meet at the main house. Claire wants to meet with Kyle first. Her mother thinks she should see the family first, but Claire doesn't see what difference a few hours could make. Victoria is sure that Victor will be displeased by this. It's times like these that he thinks they need each other the most. Claire thinks that if he cares about family, he will understand she needs to see Kyle. She doesn't care what Victoria tells Victor. She's not changing her mind. Claire, Victoria, Y&R. Is Victor's vendetta finished? It is a relief to be back in the Abbott manse for Diane, Kyle, and Jack. Diane and Kyle can hardly wait to see Harrison. She is reminded by him that his lonesome steps might not be as quiet as she remembers them to be. Although Jack promises that her long-awaited honeymoon can be rescheduled, Diane regrets that it was postponed. Diane still can't make sense of what the point of all of this was. Her husband points out that Kane never truly revealed his hand. That means none of them should get too comfortable. Kyle wishes they could have a day without talking about Kane and the trip from hell. They think of how devastated Amy and Chance's families must be. They should go to society for breakfast, according to Diane. Kyle needs to bow out to see Claire. He hates that he wasn't there for her. Kyle, Diane, Jack, Y&R. Diane tells Jack after Kyle leaves that she doesn't think Claire will be happy to learn about what happened with Audra and Victor's part in it. That's sure to put a damper on the reunion. Jack says their son did the right thing in exposing Audra and Victor's dirty little plot, but his wife worries that Kyle went to the limit and that won't sit well with Claire. When she compares this to what Jack did to save Nikki, he says he's confident Claire will understand what Kyle did. Diane hopes so, but Kyle getting so close to a former lover is impossible to ignore because jealousy is sneaky. The only thing they can hope for is that Victor will be distracted by Kane's enigmatic plan. However, they are aware that Victor is not built to let go of anything. The Newmans reunite. Nick, his parents, and Sharon arrive at the new ranch, happy to be away from the maze. Nick feels almost totally healthy, but notices Sharon has been quiet. She admits she can't stop thinking about Chance. He was special and so kind and patient with her. Nick says Summer and Abby were gutted by news of his death. Victor thanks the pair for coming with them from the airport. He has already sent a text inviting the rest of the family to visit. Nikki is surprised that he believes Kane's threat is so imminent. Nick agrees that it is. Victor adds that what is even more important right now is to support Claire and Victoria. They must need their family more than anything. Nick is eager to see his sister. They weren't there when she needed them. Nick, Y&R. When Victoria gets there, she hugs her parents. She tells them how glad she is to see them. She's never been so heartbroken and empty in her life. It would have been too much to lose one of them as well. Victor admits that Cole was a good man and a good father. He regrets not telling him that sooner. Cole, wherever he is, would, according to his daughter, be delighted to hear that. Nikki is convinced Cole sensed it. Victor changed his mind about him when he realized how much he loved Victoria and Claire. Nick wishes he had been there to help and gives his sister a hug. She admits she could have used his shoulder, and tells him he has to stay by her side in the future. His days of fighting guards in European countries are over. Victor, Victoria, Y&R. Nate and Audra catch up. Nate arrives outside of society and peers in to see Audra sitting alone. She rushes over and gives him a hug as soon as he enters. He wanted to meet her at the airport, but has been spread thin. She has only desired for him to hold her. She assures Damien that she will be there for him and Amy and still cannot believe what happened to him. Going to Nice was a huge mistake, she says. Nate regrets not going. Being away from his brother during his final days makes him sick. He can't believe Damien is gone just as they were building a real relationship. Nate, Audra, Y&R. Audra asks Nate not to torture himself, but she wishes they had all stayed at home. They discuss how badly Amy is handling her son's death as Nate explains she's shut down. Breaking the news was the hardest thing he's ever done. At first, it was denial, then fury, and now she's withdrawn. She was determined to reunite with her son. Now her purpose is gone. Nate will take care of her and has to help her transport the remains. Audra inquires how she can assist. Nate says holding her is enough. He's already taken care of all the arrangements for his brother since Amy couldn't face them. Nate explains that he set up his brother's office at Winters and even arranged a perfect project for him to lead. He almost got them Bears season tickets, but put it off so they could select tickets together. Nate was really looking forward to getting to know his brother. He is now gone. When Jack and Diane enter society, they spot Audra and Nate right away. She laments that they can't seem to stay away from that woman. Jack thinks they should at least pay condolences to Nate. She wonders if he knows what his so-called girlfriend has been up to. She agrees to keep her mouth because Jack reassures her that he is grieving. They walk over to the table and tell Nate how sorry they are about what happened to his brother. Audra says it was a shocking and bizarre trip from beginning to end. Diane says it was full of shocking surprises and nods. Her glare is met by Audra. Y&R Diane Jack Nate Diane and Jack are given a table. The food may not be as good as in France, but they are happy to be home and in the real world. He is certain that Diane is disappointed that their perfect honeymoon did not take place as they discuss returning to work. However, she has made them a blueprint, so as soon as the timing is right, nothing will stand in their way. Diane believes that they must maintain close proximity while the Audra and Kyle mess continues to unfold. Jack is hopeful that Victor will let Kane distract him from their son. If he thought it would help Claire and Kyle, he would even team up with Kane. It would be great if it brought Victor down a notch or two. Diane is surprised to learn that. Maybe something positive could come out of their trip? Will Kyle tell Claire the truth? When Kyle meets with Claire in Chancellor's Park, she throws her arms around him. They talk about how frustrating it was not to be able to hear each other's voices. If he had known what was going on with her father, he would have been on the subsequent flight home. Claire understands he was trapped. She says she wants to hear all about it. Kyle's not sure she does. He warns this isn't the best time to discuss it and he'd rather talk about how he can help her. Kyle Claire Y&R. Kyle holds Claire again and says he wishes he could do it forever. Her mind is still racing about all that's happened. Kyle promises he will share the details of his trip later. Claire admits that seeing him is all she wants right now. Plus, she wanted to be prepared in case there's something she needs to know about where he now stands with her grandfather. Shaking his head, Kyle says that's the least of their concerns. She asks about the proposal he made to Victor and Kyle says none of that matters right now. Claire senses something is wrong. Is the situation getting worse? He claims they barely crossed paths as Victor was mostly focused on Kane. More, revisiting Santa Barbara. Audra and Nate show up. The four of them do some awkward welcomes and condolences. They are all glad they had someone to lean on. Kyle asks Audra about Vibrante's setbacks before she can lead Nate away. Nate wonders what that means. Audra tells him it's nothing to worry about and the crisis has been averted. She insists that her investor is fine and informs Kyle that today is not the time to push, despite Kyle's attempts to persuade her otherwise. More. The new girlfriend of Mark Grossman Nate asks Audra about that after Kyle and Claire leave. She complains that Kyle is always taking digs at her, while he was handed a thriving cosmetics business by his daddy. Nate is confused about why the abbot cares, and she claims it's ego. She replies that Victor hasn't said anything about it, and she doesn't want to bother him while his family is in mourning when Nate asks if Victor is considering pulling his financing. She insists Kyle is just being a brat. Nate finds that odd after all that's happened. Smiling, she urges him to forget about Kyle and kisses him. Nate looks worried. Audra Nate Y&R. Claire turns to her family for support. Back at the new ranch, Victor asks Victoria how Claire is coping. She says that her daughter is going through a lot of emotions right now, but she said she would come by. Anxious to see her, Victor guesses she went to see the Abbotts before her own family. Victoria assures them her daughter will be there soon. She asks for more details about Nice, but her dad won't drop Claire's absence. Nick says it makes sense that she wants to be consoled by her boyfriend. Nikki asks her husband not to blow this out of proportion. He groans that Claire's made it clear where her priorities are. Victoria reminds her father that the bottom just dropped out of her life. He needs to stop going after her daughter. He argues he's only looking out for Claire. Nikki and Nick urge him to let this go. Victor is still concerned about her trust in Kyle. Victoria pleads with him to drop the animosity while they are saying goodbye to Cole. Claire arrives and rushes straight into Victor's arms. She hugs Nikki next and Nick tells her they are all back for anything she needs. Victoria explains that it was her daughter who insisted on waiting until they were all back for the memorial. Victor promises they will see them through this and hugs his daughter again. Victor Claire. Sharon heads for the door and tells Nick it feels like she should leave him with his family. He insists that everyone wants her to be there because she is still a family member. Sharon says they have a lot to discuss about what happened on the trip. Are we ever going to talk about that kiss? She asks. Nick says they could talk about it, or wait to see if it happens again. They return to the others and talk to Claire about how hard it is to say goodbye. Nikki tells her that they can get through anything as a family. Victor reminds them all that they are facing some difficult problems, but if they stick together, they shall prevail. They each nod to him. Kyle is warned by Jack that Audra will seek revenge. Kyle drops in at society to join his parents for breakfast. He tells them how hard losing Cole has been on Claire. Given the state she's in, he didn't think it was the time to inform her of Victor's conspiracy with Audra, adding that it doesn't look like Victor has ended his business relationship with Audra yet. He wonders if the mustache is finally coming around to accepting that this relationship with Claire is real. Victor is like a dog with a bone, which is hard to believe for his parents. Kyle admits he ran into Nate with Audra and wanted to tell him what happened, but he couldn't, given Nate's recent upset. Audra is all bravado and acting like nothing happened. Jack is sure she'll be out for revenge. The golden hues of the Genoa city skyline melted into the glass panels of Newman Tower as the day wound down, casting long shadows across the penthouse suites and corporate offices. But even as the sun dipped, the city's drama remained ablaze. Claire Grace stepped off the elevator on the 50th floor, her heels clicking rhythmically across the polished marble. Kyle Abbott trailed slightly behind her, his hands shoved into his coat pockets, brow furrowed with the weight of too many secrets. Both were fresh from their whirlwind trip to Chicago, ostensibly a business retreat, but really a desperate attempt to escape the tangle of emotions surrounding them in Genoa City. Claire glanced sideways at Kyle. "You sure about this?" she asked softly, her voice laced with a vulnerability she rarely allowed anyone to hear. "No," Kyle admitted. "But hiding never worked for either of us." Their plan was simple: show face at the Newman quarterly board reception, put on a united front for the sake of the optics and Claire's still precarious standing with the Newman family. What they hadn't anticipated was running directly into Nate Hastings and Audra Charles the moment they stepped into the lounge. Nate stood tall in a tailored black suit, but his jaw tightened the moment he spotted Kyle. Meanwhile, Audra, ever the queen of composed chaos, raised an eyebrow as she sauntered over, a wine glass dangling from her manicured fingers. Well, Audra purred, her gaze flicking between Kyle and Claire. "Looks like the prodigal's return. Or did you two even bother leaving the spotlight for more than a second?" Claire froze, then straightened, refusing to show a crack in her armor. "We were attending to Newman business in Chicago. Unlike some, we don't use our board positions for tabloid games." Audra's smile thinned, and Nate's jaw clenched tighter. But Kyle, sensing the temperature rise, stepped in. "We're not here to spar. Just to show respect to Victoria. She's been through enough." Audra's smirk faltered slightly at the mention of Victoria Newman, their shared storm. Word had gotten around that Victoria, after a long absence, had returned to Genoa City. What few knew, though, was that she wasn't returning alone. Back at the Newman ranch, a quiet miracle was unfolding. Inside the living room, Victoria Newman sat with a soft blanket draped over her lap, her hands cradling a cup of tea. Opposite her sat Nick, Sharon, and Nikki, her family. 4 months, Victoria had been on sabbatical, traveling through Europe, recovering from the loss of Cole and the betrayal she'd suffered from within her own company. But something had shifted. In Italy, she'd reconnected not just with herself but with her roots, with her daughter, Claire. "Mom," Victoria had whispered during their call just 2 weeks ago, "I want to come home. But I need to know I won't be seen as a liability again." That conversation had haunted Victoria. She knew she'd made mistakes, keeping Claire's identity hidden for too long, pushing her daughter away in the name of protection. But all that mattered now was healing. Rebuilding. "I can't undo the past," Victoria now told her family, her voice thick with emotion. "But I want to fix what I can." Nikki reached across the sofa and gently squeezed her daughter's hand. "That's all any of us can do, darling. Claire will come around. And so will the rest of the family." "Nick," never one to let sentimentality cloud judgment, leaned forward. You do realize she's been spending a lot of time with Kyle Abbott? Victoria gave a wan smile. I know. And I don't love it. But she's her own person now. Kyle may be the only one who hasn't judged her based on her past. Back at Newman Tower, things had taken a turn. I didn't realize you two were officially a thing, Nate said to Kyle, arms crossed, voice sharp with disdain. We're not labeling anything, Claire said quickly, trying to deflect the tension. Besides, I'm not here to be interrogated. We're here to support Victoria. Support? Audra scoffed. You were barely here when she needed you. Now you stroll in playing the hero. Kyle's eyes narrowed. That's rich coming from someone who tried to use Claire's past as a stepping stone to the top of Newman Media. Audra stepped forward, her voice lowering to a hiss. Careful, Kyle. You don't know the half of what's happening behind the scenes. Claire took a breath. Enough. Whatever games you're playing, we're not part of them anymore. Nate studied her for a long moment, then surprisingly nodded. Good. Then stay out of what's coming. He turned to Audra, who gave one last withering glance before following him out of the lounge. Kyle and Claire stood in the quiet aftermath, the tension still crackling in the air. That felt like a warning, Kyle muttered. Claire nodded. A storm's coming. And they think they're the only ones holding the lightning. Meanwhile, at the ranch, Claire's return was already in motion. Victoria had arranged a private dinner, inviting her immediate family and requesting Claire be present. It would be the first time in years the Newmans would sit at the same table without corporate tension driving the conversation. Claire arrived with Kyle by her side, though she hesitated at the front door. Go on, Kyle urged gently. They're your family, and they need you as much as you need them. When Victoria opened the door and saw Claire standing there, something unspoken passed between them, an ache, a longing, a fragile hope. I'm glad you came, Victoria whispered. Claire nodded, emotion flickering in her eyes. So am I. Dinner was both awkward and healing. Victor was absent out of the country on some urgent matter. But perhaps that was for the best. With Nikki, Nick, Sharon, and even Summer stopping by, the mood turned from tentative to cautiously joyful. So, Summer said playfully at one point, her eyes on Claire and Kyle, should I start planning a Newman-Abbott merger? Kyle choked on his wine, and Claire flushed. Summer. But laughter broke out, and for the first time in months, Victoria saw light in her daughter's eyes. After dinner, Victoria pulled Claire aside onto the patio. The stars shimmered above them, and a warm breeze rustled the nearby trees. I'm sorry, Victoria said softly. For everything. I should have fought harder for you. Claire turned to her, tears welling up. You did what you thought was best. And maybe, we both needed time to figure out who we are without all the chaos. Victoria smiled sadly. But now it's time to face the chaos. Together. Claire nodded. I'm ready. The next morning, word spread quickly that Victoria was officially back at Newman Enterprises, this time with Claire installed as her special advisor. It sent ripples through the power structure. Nate was furious. Audra called an emergency meeting. Kyle met with Jack, preparing Jabot's next strategy. We need to be careful, he told his father. Something big is brewing between Newman Media and the board. At Crimson Lights, Sharon watched the news on her tablet and sighed. Victoria's home, she murmured. Let's hope it's for good this time. Across town, Audra poured herself a drink and stared out the window of her penthouse. You were right, she told Nate. They are back. And they are going to be a problem. Nate took a long sip of his scotch. Then we become a bigger one. But what none of them saw coming, what no one in Genoa City could predict, was Victor's next move. Because while everyone was focused on Victoria's return, Victor Newman was orchestrating something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something final. And he had just landed in Istanbul. Not for business.